Well, we've been marching our way through spiritual disciplines this summer. And as you recall, those are ways for us to connect with God, to grow deeper in our love for Him, to experience a greater intimacy and deeper faith. And as the weeks progress here through August, you're going to like the sermon topics less and less. That's the warning, huh? Because these disciplines that we're tackling are some that are not practiced so much. So today we're talking about silence and solitude. Next week we'll be talking about fasting. And the week following that will be simplicity. And so it's some very challenging words. Well, I just returned from Green Hills Camp. We had a good week. I asked for you all to pray for my voice, and I never lost my voice. Amen. It got much deeper. It was strained a bit, but never totally lost. And I actually slept more than I normally do. I know that because I had very bizarre dreams several of the nights. One night that more campers had suddenly shown up to be there for camp who hadn't registered that. So who knows what subliminal things go through your mind. But it was a good week. We had a number of new campers, and it's kind of like Forrest Gump in the box of chocolates. When it's a new camper, you never know what you're going to get, right? Because some campers are very independent and can do most everything by themselves, and others need assistance with most everything. So sometimes you pair people up in a cabin and it doesn't work right, but everything seemed to work very smoothly. So it was a good year. For one of the returning campers, she's been going for 21 years. We will call her April. That's not really her name, but this last year has been very hard for her. She's been battling breast cancer. So she ended up having a mastectomy and a chemotherapy and radiation. And, for anyone who's been through that, horrific. But imagine someone with special needs trying to grapple and understand what's going on and why it's going on. And her sister was sharing with me before camp began some of the things she had gone through. And shared when it was time for the mastectomy that beforehand that April continued to be clenching her fist very tightly. And they figured, well, she just must be really nervous about what she's going to have to face. But even after the surgery was over, she was tightly clenching her fist. And they said to her, hey, the surgery's over, everything went well, you can go ahead, you can just relax. Why are you still clenching your fist? And she said, Jesus is holding my hand. Amazing insight, huh? Before, as counselors, we met together. We had a bit of a worship service, and I read a story to them by Kelly Adkins, where she wrote a reflection about her brother who had special needs. And I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but just a snippet from that story. She writes, Kevin trusts God, not confined by intellectual reasoning. When he comes to Christ, he comes as a child. Kevin seems to know God, to really be friends with him in a way that's difficult for an educated person to grasp. God seems like his closest companion. In my moments of doubt and frustrations with my Christianity, I envy the security Kevin has in his simple faith. It's then that I'm most willing to admit that he has some divine knowledge that rises above my mortal questions. It's then that I realize perhaps he is not the one with a handicap. I am. My obligations, my fear, my pride, my circumstances, they all become disabilities when I do not submit them to Christ. Who knows if Kevin comprehends things I can never learn. I challenge the counselors, learn from your campers this week. Watch them, because I think they experience God and know God in a way sometimes we don't. So we were able to see that at camp. And I think for a lot of people, we do have those handicapping conditions, don't we? Fear, stress, anxiety, worry, burdened down with so much. When all the while we need to be saying, take my hand, Precious Lord, lead me on. Right? To invite Jesus to simply take us by the hand as we walk through it. About 3 weeks ago, I had shared with you a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Life Together, an amazing book about Christian community. And Bonhoeffer shares in that book that we need to have a healthy balance between isolation and community. Now, some of you are wired to be people persons. You just love hanging out with people and talking with others and interacting with them. You're just very social. The challenge for you is to also find comfort in isolation, to be alone by yourself in solitude, just with God. Even it might be uncomfortable. Others are the other side of the spectrum. People who don't like people so much. You prefer to be by yourself. And my dad is one of those who said he'd like to live in a place where it takes the stagecoach 2 weeks to deliver him a letter, right? He wants to be off and alone. But also the challenge is there. You need to be in Christian community. It's not an either or. We have to have that balance. And so we do experience life together. But a challenge for many of us is to find moments for solitude. To find moments when we can sit in the stillness. Here in this 46th Psalm, we're given a command through the psalmist, but God is speaking and declares, "Be still and know that I am God." There's an interesting Hebrew word that appears through the Psalms. S-E-L-A-H. I had said to Janet, you don't have to read that one. Most believe in scholarship that was actually a musical term, perhaps a musical interlude. You'd sing something for a while and then there's an instrumental break. Many believe that's what that was. And I was told in a seminary class, a liturgy class, well, when you're reading that, you can come upon that word. You're not to read it, you're simply to pause and reflect. And so it's quite fitting in this psalm that it commands and gives us this charge to pause and reflect. We're not sure if this was during the time of King Jehoshaphat or when this occurred, but in many ways it's dark. Talking about hardships and natural disaster that comes about and images of warfare and all that goes on. And yet this command is given for stillness. What does it really mean, this to be still and know that God is God? In the original Hebrew, the word really means to cease and desist, to stop. Well, what is it you're to stop? In this case, for the psalmist, it's worry. It's anxiety. It's stress. For if God is with them, they are reminded, we have no need to fear. We have no need to be apprehensive. Though everything should change, though the earth should crumble, though mountains fall into the sea, right? God is our refuge and strength. God is our help in trouble. God, the God of Jacob, is our refuge. It's a call for the people to recognize who truly is in charge. So often I think we like to just think, God will all covered, I'm going to do it myself. Yet we worry and fret, don't we? Normally during our week at camp, Wednesday is a big day. We take field trips. Now, it was to a horse farm last year. For this year, we went to the Lake Raystown Resort, took a cruise on the Proud Mary, and then we went to the water park where there were water slides and swimming pools. And now, looking at the forecast a week ahead of time, it showed Wednesday was to be a total washout, right? As the days increased, got closer to it, it still showed rain. 60% chance of showers. And so off and on through the week, I'm gazing at my Weather Channel app on the phone, seeing, what's coming up. And it showed that day that there were to be thunder showers between 1 and 3 p.m. Guess when we were to be at the water park? 1 and 3 p.m. So I keep looking at the phone, seeing what it says. But Christy's sitting in the back running things. She said, I'm not even looking at that forecast. I'm just trusting God's going to give us the good weather we need. Guess what happened between 1 and 3 p.m.? Smooth sailing. It was overcast. Didn't even have to apply the sunscreen so much on the campers, right? Didn't have to worry about them getting burned. It wasn't until 3 o'clock that everybody was stepping onto the bus, and suddenly in the distance there was a rumble of thunder, right? God took care of us. He knew what we needed and gave it to us. But, I think our natural inclination is to, get worried because we kind of leave God out of the equation. We think God isn't concerned about some of the things we go through and face. And some of you are going through some serious health issues now, or family dynamics and struggles, and you're thinking, how can I get through this? How can I face it? And we need to hold on to this psalm, don't we? God's our refuge. God's with us in all that occurs. Be still. So we need to cease the worrying. We need to recall and remember who's in charge. So that's one possible understanding of this stillness. Another possibility is just recognizing the need for solitude and for silence. We often don't build that into our day. We often are just constantly bombarded with noise and activity that, and we wonder why we're been out of shape sometimes. One particular proverb, this is not from the book of Proverbs, but the proverb is, all those who open their mouths close their eyes. That is, the more and more you're talking about things, the more you're not seeing what's going on around you. We need silence. The writer of Ecclesiastes would say there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. As you shared in the call to worship together, David's words, for God alone my soul awaits in silence. He alone is my salvation. It's good for us to find a quiet place to be alone. Grace Marie had shared that weeks back. Jesus sharing with the disciples, let's go away to a quiet place and rest a while. No, we need that. We need to carve out those moments to be alone with God. And we may even think, well, I need to go alone to my cabin in the woods way out there, and as there I'll find my silence eventually, maybe 3 weeks from now when I get to go, all right? Richard Foster reminds us, the devotional writer, we need to find little solitudes each and every day. That is, we need to find those moments where we can be alone in the silence and the stillness. Here's some ideas. How about before you even get out of bed, before others are up, when it's quiet, to be in prayer, to thank God for another day, for breath in your lungs, for life and for love, and cherish those moments of silence. Or if you're someone who likes that morning cup of joe, right, or you're a teetotaler like myself, that's a good, as you're holding on to the mug, it's a good time to savor the flavor, but also to commune with God, to take advantage of the silence. On your drive to work, that commute, you don't always need to have the radio blaring, right? You can simply be in silence. And instead of being stressed out by the traffic around you or the lights that you're stopped at, using it as an opportunity to be in prayer and seeking God and listening for God speaking to you. Or perhaps in the cool of the evening, is it better for you to sit out on your deck or your front porch and to be with God? Something a lot of folks in the church don't take advantage of is coming into this place. Most times during the week, this sanctuary is empty. But a place you can come and find stillness. Find your own sanctuary from the noises and distractions of all the world. Often before praying at mealtime, we would have a verbal prayer, but why not try once in a while just having a time of silence? Each one communing with God in their own way, listening. And as people build homes, they build family rooms, they build dining rooms and playrooms, and many don't ever build a prayer room. Where is your prayer room in your house? There was a movie back a few years ago, War Room. It's a place where you can go to war, truly seeking God's face, but truly being a power to be reckoned with as you're engaged in prayer. If you don't have a set room, I think you should at least have a set chair. That place where you go, and others know, well, don't mess with them when they're there because they're engaged in prayer. A place for you to be with God. You know, nobody's ever going to force you to sit down and be quiet, right? That happens to children, right? Teachers will have to do that in a few weeks, right? Sit down and be quiet, right? Nobody's going to force you that in this day and age. But you're the one who controls your schedule. And you're the one who chooses whether or not you are going to be alone with God. We're going to receive communion in a few moments. Maybe you're someone who has been worrying about something. It's just been on your mind and you've been losing sleep. Why don't you, as you come to receive these elements, to just drop that at Jesus' feet and say, Jesus, would you hold my hand through this? Would you allow me to just give this over to you? Or maybe you're someone, life's just so busy, you don't know, there's no way I can find time to be still. It's kind of hard to be still when you're going down the highway of life 95 miles per hour. Maybe you're someone running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Heed the words of those great theologians, Simon and Garfunkel. Slow down. You move too fast. You got to make the morning last. Why are you in such a hurry? Be still. Know that he is God. Let him take you by the hand. And as you do, life will take on an entirely different look as you trust him and revere him. And may it be so. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.